Well, welcome to our book club, chapter 4. Today's chapter is Two Legs Learning to Dance from the book Youth Ministry Now and Not Yet by our guest, Matt Wilkinson. And so Matt's going to lead us through chapter 4 and give us some insights. And so, Matt, if you're not sure who he is the director of Next Generation Ministries here at CBOQ. And so, Matt, welcome once again.
Wonderful. Great. As we dive in to this next chapter, this is one that I think is so important for those of us as we work in the local church, engaging with youth and what it looks like to really build effective ministries. What does it really mean to lead an effective youth ministry? It's important that we ask ourselves this question. David Kinnaman, the president of the Barna Group, writes this: hopefully we can prepare the next generation to live meaningful and follow Jesus wholeheartedly in these changing times. And how can the next generation rise to the challenge of revitalizing the Christian community for our mission to and in the broader kingdom? You see, this question opens up and asks us to dive in to ask ourselves, why are we doing what we're doing? What is the purpose and mission of youth ministry? If we're going to be effective, we have to begin with knowing why we're doing what we're doing, and then to say, actually, are we actually implementing on it? Ask yourself, is youth ministry about keeping kids safe, bottling them in, keeping them away from the dangers of the world? Or is it a place to welcome youth from the world into, and then just to simply open the doors and as many as we can have fill in? Or is it a place to equip students to go out into their world to reach and share the message of Jesus with their friends, and in turn welcoming them to join with them in a faith community? As youth workers, we are more likely to talk the game of reaching and discipling, of evangelism and helping kids and youth grow in their relationship with Jesus. But when it comes to actually implementing both those elements, both the side of evangelism and outreach as well as discipleship, we tend to walk with a limp. What I mean by that is that we have to look at the reality that we talk about this chapter being two legs learning to dance. We've got to work these two legs together. What are these two legs? Well, we have on one the idea of evangelism, the idea of being able to be God's agents of love in both word and deed in and around our communities. And there's discipleship, which is about biblical learning, internalizing God's truth, having it influence life's decisions and behavior, caring for the things that God cares about, and seeking to have the lordship of Christ lead you. Both of these need to work together. I say that some ministries are going to excel in reaching those who are far from Jesus. And some are going to really focus in and go deep of helping those that are within the church community really go deep into a relationship with Jesus. The challenge with that is that we actually need both and. It's not to do one or the other primarily, but actually one needs the other in order for us to go forward well, in order for us to be actually most effective. Without discipleship, we are not clear on the message that we can bring out. Without having the purpose of living out the mission and love of God in seeking with word and deed to respond to sharing God's love, to respond to issues of justice, to making a difference in serving the least of these. Without a purpose that way, the knowledge is empty. These really need to work together. The key understanding is that one should not take priority over the other, rather see that they each need each other and they actually strengthen one another. The challenge that we face in youth ministry in the church is no one questions the call to say, go reach the next generation. But if you actually implement on that and they start to engage in your community, how welcome will they be? We have to ask ourselves, are we able to do this dance, or do we walk with a limp? Do we only do one area really well and kind of drag the other along because we're just supposed to do that? Or are we passionate about both of them? It's helpful when we look at our ministries and ask ourselves, am I more oriented towards being an attractional ministry or a missional ministry? Some of the things to ask yourself to say, where am I more oriented towards is, have I been teaching students how to share the gospel? Or are we trying to equip students for how to get their students into the church to hear from the paid Christian professional? Where does engagement with those far from God happen? Does that only happen in a structured program outreach, in a structured time of being in the church or being on an intentional Zoom or online call? Or is it entering into their world, meeting them where they're at first? Whose felt needs are you meeting and how are you meeting them? Are they just those of those families that are tied to the church? Or is it looking at the community around and going, what are the community's felt needs and how are we responding to those felt needs that can open the door to demonstrate God's love and ultimately to share his message and invite others to join in the faith community? Second area to look at, and when we come around understanding the effectiveness of doing the dance together, is when it comes to event or service. Big events or events are not more important or less important or good or bad, but why are we doing what we're doing? When it comes to looking at effective youth ministry, and we're seeing some shifts in ministry with young people, the only person that's making a difference is your event or is your gathering for a purpose, as an event or what you're going to do leading. It could be even a large event, but is it leading to a way of making a difference, serving the needs of those around you? What are you doing and who is it benefiting? What's your purpose for what you're doing with what you have? See, students are looking and say that one of my most guarded things right now is my time. But I want to put my time towards something that's going to make a meaningful difference. How can I be part of offering hope, of offering something good, of responding to a need in the world? It's an open door to have still large scale events. Those can still have a key value. But was it come with the attitude is actually, I'm coming to do this because of the way that we can serve? Third area I want to look at is reaching the unchurched, reaching those who are on their way to God. Whether they know it or not, is God is deeply pursuing each one of us. And he chooses to use those of us who are walking with him to reach out. The question is, what is the environment that we're creating and that we will be welcoming young people into? Within the church walls or within Zoom gatherings or within online presence? What message are we sending when a young person is to engage in that environment? Is it one of one where they say, hey, I relate to this, I connect, I feel welcome, I feel like, hey, I'm in the know? Or does it feel like you're entering into a secret club and you don't know the language and you don't know the routines and you don't know the traditions and you feel like you're an outsider? How do you make it a place where it says, hey, this is a place where we're going to let you know what it's all about? There's nothing secret behind the door of the church. There's a great mystery many young people and people have of going, what's behind? What actually happens behind the door of that church? Help erase that mystery and welcome them into the relationship and the people that it's about. How can youth experience your community before they even come to a gathering? Challenge, the challenge of being called to reach out, but in the reality, the church may want you just to keep safe. What I mean by this is that when we're going to seek to reach out in church, if you actually really start doing it, is the church really ready for it? Does the church leadership want to support? That things may not sound as pure around the conversations if you're welcoming people to be part of conversations in the community, in your faith community. The topics that may be asked and discussed or pushed back on may be different than if you're trying to just keep a community of, I want to keep everybody out and we can be protected. When you start to actually do reaching out, when you start to invest into those out in the community and say, I want to be the hands and feet of Jesus, I want to introduce them to the message of Jesus, you got to meet them where they're at and then welcome them along the journey. That also goes for those who may have been born and raised in the church. Don't forget about them, that they may also still feel like aliens in a place that's supposed to be so normal for them because of where they've grown up. But they may walk in and go, I feel more comfortable at school, or I feel more comfortable on a sports team. I feel more comfortable with this peer group than I do in my own youth group. To find out what their needs are. Where are they coming from? How do we use language that they understand? Helping them move closer to Jesus. Some may say that when you try to reach out well, that you're watering down the message. when in reality, you're simply trying to meet students in a place where they can understand. And some of them just simply need to still be on milk. But there's others you have to make sure are getting meat. You may have to create different avenues or different means, different arenas of which you're engaging different students for different purposes at different times. There's not a one size fits all to reach young people. So how do our ministries look diverse in the way that what we're offering and engaging in media, and not expecting all kids to be at every meeting, at every gathering, at every event, but rather say there's certain things that certain kids should be at if they're going to thrive in your ministry to help them take the next step. Finally, what is it to tell stories of life change? If you want to have buy-in to ministries that are going to reach out and build discipleship, is that church leaders, the church community, and those around you need to hear the stories of life change. Not just to know there's an event or to see a poster, to hear about a flyer or to get an email, but to know the stories of life change. How are both believers and those on their way to Jesus moving one step closer to him, both through evangelism and discipleship? We should always be sharing the stories of how our ministries are helping every kid, whether they've grown up in the church, whether they've recently connected to the church, or we're reaching out to them, how we're part of helping them move one step closer to Jesus. Because you see, reaching out, evangelism, and discipleship are two legs that need to work together to effectively help students move one step closer to Jesus. There we go, my friends. Chapter 4. Looking forward to how the story continues of how we reach those in this generation in today. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Matt, once again for those words and especially for your insights through chapter 4. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, by all means, you can also get your copy of the book. Just let us know if you go to cboq.ca/book club if you don't have one already and you're part of a CBOQ church. Also, just let you know, the next one in March, we're going to be looking at chapter 5, which is being relational is being redefined. And so we're looking forward to that chapter. So blessings to you as you continue to figure out how to dance with two legs.